Hi everyone and welcome to your daily tarot reading. Now I know that I separated tarot reading from astrology for a very specific reason because some people are simply just not interested and do not resonate with astrology whatsoever. But still, today I have to mention one or maybe two astrological aspects because without them, this reading wouldn't make that much sense. And this is due that the reading is opened by the Seven of Cups, and that is a card of dreams, of the illusionary nature of our consciousness, and ultimately, because everything in reality depends on our consciousness, isn't just everything a big illusion? And this is where we have a very powerful celestial dance in the sky where Mars, the planet of action, the planet of focus, of intention, of the power of our wills, dances together in a very, very tight conjunction with Ceres, the planetoid, which is basically our source of nourishment, as in Demetra, the goddess of grain. So basically, it tells us how we nurture our beings. And when it meets with Mars, especially in the sign of Pisces, well, this represents that our souls, our psyche, our consciousness also needs food like every single other aspect of our beings, may it be our physical bodies, our brain, which needs electricity, or any other symbolism. Basically, this is our source of nourishment, so we have to be very, very careful what we allow to nourish our beings, to nourish our souls, our spirituality, because we are talking about Pisces here, so that is all spirit, all psyche, all emotions. And if we choose to nourish ourselves with something very, very illusionary, very, very ephemeral, for example, the truth and inner processes of other people, then our own truth and our own perceptions will actually depend on them, because if we take something into ourselves which is very alien to our mind, to our heart, to our consciousness, well, that idea, that perception, that notion can simply not evolve in us because it is something not natural to us. So here we should be very, very careful, especially around this time, what we and who we listen to. So, all the sources of information on the internet, and in this case, especially spiritual sources of information, because when physical reality is very, very tough on all of us, and we know that economic collapse, potential famine, and all of the other expressions of this turmoil are awaiting us, and there is no escape. Then all of us basically have this tendency to escape into a higher state of being, into a higher state of consciousness and spirituality, and especially the science fiction illusionary spirituality of certain people is a perfect means of escapism. But we have to be careful how much of their fantasies and beliefs we actually take into ourselves and nurture, because it can be very dangerous. And as I said earlier, we have to be very careful what we allow into our sphere of consciousness, what we allow to nurture our minds, our hearts, our, psyche, because if we take on a very illusionary perception, a very illusionary philosophy, something which is basically a big daydream up there in the clouds, well, then that notion, that energy cannot evolve inside of us because it is alien, it doesn't belong to us, and basically we will get to a point where our beings will reject it and repulse it outside from us, and that can lead to traumas and the feeling of being deceived and even self-deception. And we also have the Venus square Neptune, Mercury square Neptune right now, which is exactly about that. Deceptions, lies, self-deception, where a massive flow of information gets into our sphere, so we are being showered, bombarded with all sorts of information, but it is our responsibility to filter it. And this is where we just have to put a stop to news, the bombardment of the media, the bombardment of certain people who found this window of opening to express their fantasies, to express their visions and futuristic perceptions, which are basically very true to them, but not true for the rest of the world. So we have to be really, really careful here what we choose to nurture our beings, what we take in onto our mental sphere, what we take in as belief, because it can, yes, on one hand, it can help us, you know, stay in our own fantasy and illusion and make this period that much easier for us. But at the same time, when this is over, well, it's gonna be a moment of reckoning when the reality we are all going to be invited to step into is going to be the total opposite of your beliefs and fantasies. And that will have a very negative effect, because that will give you a very bad start. Because we cannot ignore the big truth that this is a karmic closure and a karmic opening. One cycle closes and the other one begins, and this is something which is actually true for many people in many different ways. May it be astrologically, may it be simply cosmologically, the solar minimum, for example, the changing of the Earth's electromagnetic constants, for example. All of this is actually happening in physical reality, and it doesn't matter how we interpret it. If we interpret it spiritually, if we interpret it strictly scientifically, if we interpret it as the succession of cycles, this is still going on and it's inevitable. But this is where we have to be very careful how we are going to step into the new cycle, because if we have went through a massive purge but we feed ourselves with the illusions and BS of other people, well, then we haven't done anything at all. We just stood in one place where we had a very good attempt to free ourselves from any kind of psychological shackle and the past and our own dramas, but we absorb those of other people. Should we even be surprised that we are nowhere, that nothing good happened to us, that we don't have any groundedness in our lives? Because if we just lived on illusions, it doesn't matter if it's our own personal misbelief and illusion, or if it's that from other people, it's still the same thing. It will definitely not lead to progress. And this is where we actually have to wake up to the fact that this is about us individually and not about a happy, interconnected future where we're part of this blissful collective. No, absolutely not. This is about us individually. And actually, the age of Aquarius is truly much more truer about the individual than it is about the collective, because the collective is heavily conditioned by our tolerance, by our wisdom, by our capacity to tolerate another person's uniqueness and distinctiveness. And if that doesn't happen, well, then all that is left is just the individual. So basically, this age of Aquarius and everything that we're transitioning into, the only real part of it, the only guarantee that we're going to experience is the individual part, that all of us can have a much greater individual liberty and opinion and freedom of this and that. But we tolerating those of other people and other people tolerating our own, now there's where we don't have absolutely any guarantee, and the universe and karma and everything doesn't even care about that, because unity is an option and no one is going to force us to tap into it. Whatever we have individually, that's perfectly enough and fine for all of us, because after all, if the universe experiences itself through us, well, then the individual matters to it much more than the collective. The collective only serves the comfort of the individual. So let's not delude ourselves that much, because it's not going to be an ideal world. It's not going to be something which is that very much 180 degrees different. Basically, what is happening right now in this present moment in time is nothing new. It took place 504 years ago at the time of the Protestant movement, where yes, the world changed so very much, but it didn't change overnight. And ironically, there was also a plague ravaging the world at the same time. So plagues usually are just a reminder that we are going through a massive transition and we have to change our daily routines, our perception of normality, and that's it. No one guarantees any success. No one says that it's going to be a utopia afterwards. Absolutely not. Especially from an astrological perspective, there's not going to be a very easy future. It's going to be very hard. It's going to be full of conflicts, full of struggles. This is where our brains are going to be on overtime, and for many people it will be overloaded and their story ends. This is part of the deal. This is part of the big picture. This isn't where we're heading into paradise. We're just heading into something new, a new chapter, and that's it. And if the illusions and fake perceptions and ideologies of other people has led us to the pleasant moment suffering, well then shouldn't we be wiser and just, embody our rights, our divine rights, our powers to discern what reality is for us individually and to leave other people out of it. We don't need comparison. We don't need to be supported by others. We don't need to be loved by others. This story is about us. We are the heroes of our own journeys, of our own stories, and the ancient people living 4,000 years ago understood this that much more better and more maturely than us, and that's why they had that much easier time accepting the pain and suffering of life. And all their legends, all their, philosophies are based on that, and they were absolutely fine with it. So isn't this just us being big children where we don't want to accept that life is hard? And it's beautiful that way. It's not a big tragedy. This is how it's always been, and it's perfectly fine. And this is the main message of the Seven of Cups, that we have to really discern illusion from reality, at least for us individually. Because what reality is to us, well, our minds, our hearts, the deep core of our being knows that 100 million %. So only a part of us is living an illusion, because deep down inside, we know exactly where we stand, we know exactly what's true and not, and most importantly, we know exactly what we care about and what we do not care about. And if we don't care about something, it doesn't matter how important it is to other people. Well, isn't it a hypocrisy to force ourselves to be compassionate and to care about something which isn't important to the beings who we are? If we force ourselves to care about whatever that we don't care about in our hearts of hearts, or isn't that just other type of slavery, where other people don't even have to enslave us because we offer our servitude on a silver tray? So we have to rethink and reanalyze what reality actually is for us personally. Because if we do that, if we have the guts to just say stop to the BS, say stop to the fantasies, to the fairy tales, to the illusions, and embody our healthy beliefs, and know that our beliefs are an infinite reservoir of divine power which we can invest into absolutely anything that we choose. And if we choose what matters to us deep down in our hearts of hearts, regardless of what that is, regardless of what polarity that attraction has, if we choose honesty to the self, then we cannot go wrong, because that lucky star instantly is going to shine down upon us and align us whatever we wish to experience, whatever matters to us deep down in our heart of hearts, because that feeling, whatever we truly love unconditionally, is what karma is for us personally. And it doesn't matter what it is, how small, big, how individual or collective it is still what we wish to experience, what we came here to do. And if we invest our passions and our energy, our hopes, dreams, and our belief into it, then we cannot go wrong. Then reality and everything in our lives, even if the world would be, like the Third World War, everything would be in flames, it would still support us. Life would be still easy for us. Our existence would be still empowering for us personally, because we would be choosing our own stories. And if our own stories have to play out in a chaotic world, well, that's no problem, because that is what we need. I repeat, as long as we are absolutely truthful about it and don't take anything as a big drama, as a big injustice, as a big warfare. Yes, we live in a time where the whole world is about informational and psychological warfare, absolutely 1,000,000%, but this is just the setup, this is just the stage, and not our stories. Yes, some people are active players in that, no problem with that, because that is what they have to do. But those people who are not, and this is just their stage, well, they can just accept it and not immerse into the drama and be grateful that they are outside characters, if that makes sense, that they're not deeply immersed and interwoven in the story. They're just fillers. And being a filler is a massive blessing, because your life can be about you and your journey and not about humanity's transit, and it's absolutely fine. It is not selfish. If this is what you came here for, selfish would be not doing your own thing. It would be stupid to just give away your power and belief to other people who desperately need it. May it be centralized power, or may it be the light workers, the happy joy people. It doesn't matter, because they represent different sides of the spectrum. They are at war with each other and not you. You just came here to do what you have to do. And chances are your work and your soul path can be supportive of both sides. You don't even have to choose your alliances, basically. For example, a psychologist, well, they're going to support anyone regardless of what they believe, who they are, what they represent. So, a healer is still going to be a healer regardless of what world we live in. A writer, a creator, a poet is still going to be the same. A builder is still going to build the same way. So, whatever you believe in is up to you, and it is your responsibility what you invested into. And finally, the Six of Swords tells us that basically all of this is a huge transition. So of course it's full of fears, of course it's full of contradictions. It is basically like an act where you will lose someone very dear, and we have to go through the mourning phase, because that is part of the journey. It doesn't matter what life philosophy, what religion, what you embody. When you lose someone who you love very, very deeply and was part of your life for a long time, you still mourn. You still have to go through that act of surrendering, an act of accepting that this is what happened, and turning that person into a very beautiful and cherished memory. So this is what all of us are doing with our old lives, with how our lives and reality used to be just 3-4 months ago. We are accepting that we lost that. We are accepting that that changes now. We are accepting that the way things used to function just a couple of months ago is totally gone and finished, and there is no way back. So we can take all the good lessons, we can take all the practicality, we can take all the life experience as a reward, as a harvest from that era which just finished, and integrate it into ourselves, and we can leave everything that didn't function behind and not treat it as a massive drama and trauma, which can frighten us into submission, that we are absolutely forced not to repeat the same mistakes again, or it's going to be doom and gloom. No, it's nothing about this. We have to filter what we take with us and what we leave behind individually, and that is going to be creating our future. So if a lot of people take something very valuable from how things used to work in the past and they integrate it into the future, well, that means that whatever they took, may it be a methodology, may it be a principle, may it be a structure, whatever, a law, a very favorable custom that worked for eons and it's still perfectly valid, well, that is absolutely fine. We don't have to radicalize ourselves, but at the same time, we have to accept that this is just a massive transition, which is what we are living and gonna live in the next 6 months. So we not only should we not take it that much seriously, but we should be aware of that this is something very ephemeral. It is just a passage. It is just a rite of passage, basically. We shouldn't ground ourselves into anything, because of course it's not going to be permanent. Of course it's not going to be stable. Stability is going to be achieved after 6 months. Maybe the first signs of stability are going to appear in December 2020 and not before. So we shouldn't really expect big stability, big eureka moments, massive breakthroughs where this is what is going to offer me the security for the rest of my life, because it's not going to be that way. And finally, the reading is closed by the combination of the Four of Cups and the Nine of Coins. So this confirms the fact that all of us are being divinely guided. Four of Cups, divine guidance, divine messages, where the divine has more the steering wheel of our lives than we do personally, because we have surrendered it and it was the wisest choice to make. And this is where all of us are individually and not collectively guided into different, realities, different versions, different karmic paths, and we shouldn't accept stability still, because first of all, we have to diverge, we have to be separate from one another, we have to be ripped apart, like a pomegranate, where all the little seeds have to unstick, they have to, be put in a bowl individually, where they're not sticking to each other. And only after that can we expect to have an empowered future, to live very individual lives of freedom, where all of us are doing whatever we want to do. The Nine of Coins, the card of freedom, the card of individuality, the card of financial independence, where earthly matters, basically like finances, the legal systems, society, the repartition of resources, are not going to be limiting our personal freedom and happiness. But that doesn't mean that we are not going to be part of it one way or another, just that all of this is psychological, because if we don't feel suffocated, if we don't feel enslaved, well then that is already a very happy future, and everything changes, but nothing changes in reality. The only thing that actually is going to change is our psychological perception of reality, and not reality itself. So if you are going through a massive inner conflict, confusion, not knowing what to believe, it is fine, don't panic. That doesn't mean that you're unguided, that doesn't mean that the divine or your soul or your spirit or your intuitive senses abandoned you. If you don't have any stability in your life right now, it's not a big problem, because everyone, one way or another, is like this, and not having stability is in the present moment much better than being immersed into something, because as that Six of Swords suggests, 6 months after this, things are going to be so very different. So that is the moment when we will actually have to embody the choices that we make in the present moment, So there is no rush. It is absolutely not a good idea to drive ourselves into forcefully believing something or supporting something if we are just ungrounded, lost, confused, like children when their parents lose them in a shopping mall and they have to look for them. It's absolutely fine, because this is the main theme that we have to be playing out individually. It is fine, it is a blessing. Yes, it's frightening, it is uncomfortable, but it's not a big catastrophe. It is not a big disaster. We need to be patient and we need to go with the flow, because everything is going to be working out just fine as long as we are living our own truths, our own perceptions, our own sense of reality, and definitely not those of other people. Because once this 6 months passes, once we have stability, well, then you would have just given your power away to make the reality of that specific person, that big author, that big guru, that much more prosperous, and not your own. So, this is the actual trick in it. This is the actual manipulation in it. This is why everyone shares stuff on the internet and they need followers. They need people who support them, because every single person, every single soul, brain basically, which supports them, believes them, is contributing to their massive future prosperity and their place in society. So rather, let's just wake up to the fact that this is about us and not a guru. So let's just disconnect and believe our own realities, work with ourselves, and take the opinions of others as maybe as a guidance, maybe as a new perspective, and that's it. What we believe should be expressly told by our inner core and not other people. Well, thank you so much for listening. Wish everyone a blessed and safe day. Until next time, bye for now.